May I have the password, please? That's right. That's the password for admittance. But what, might I ask, is the password for the house? That's too bad. Because here, it doesn't matter if you forgot it, or if you never even knew it in the first place. You will kindly subscribe to the channel and watch the review in full. Subscribe to the channel yourself, or we will do it for you. Hello everyone, and welcome to the ASMR review show. So, obviously I know there's an important thing about how we're all supposed to be doing our part and wearing masks, so I thought, well, why don't I get myself a really nice looking one, Oh. It doesn't actually cover my mouth, so this is kind of useless. Well, the aesthetic is still quite nice, I think. So, it's going to be a little difficult to drink the Christmas beer in this mask, It's a nice one, but I guess we'll have to take off one moment. Much better. Ooh, nice and cozy. Okay, so this is it. We are on to the last beer of the Christmas reviews, 12 days of ASMR Christmas thing. Well, what do we have for you today? This is Stickenfass. Barrel-aged Stick alt beer. So is this like all Dutch, I guess, or like Krampusy? I'm not sure. It's interesting. Flavor notes: smooth, bourbon, caramel, malty. Interesting fact: the oldest known tattoos were discovered on the well-preserved body of a man nicknamed Otzi, who was found beneath a glacier in the Alps. His body displayed over 60 different tattoos created using carbon ink. And, well, if we gotta end this all, well, it's nice to end it with a beer that's 6.9%. Nice. Okay. Well, for the last time, let's crack open this cold one. Cheers. Ooh, that's nice. Yeah, that's what it is. It says it only has water, barley, hops, and yeast in it, but these barrel-aged ones, they have that nice bourbony, Scotch-ish type feel to them, I think that full flavored Scotchness, right? If that's how I could describe it, possibly, that's how I feel about this, right? I've definitely had a lot of types of beers like this one before. They're always very nice. They're a pretty big, beefy one, It's very nice. So yeah, there we go. We've had our 12 beers. I have all the cans actually still. I kept them. Maybe I'll give a nice little overview of all of them to round up the nice Christmas series of videos for you. Well, I saved the best for last, and that was I wanted to talk about my favorite Christmas movie. Out of the ones I've talked about, I think the one I like the most is Brazil, because that would possibly be in my top 10 films of all time. But the one that is like the most of a favorite Christmas movie for me, the one where it's like, that's the tradition. You know, some people's tradition is Home Alone or Elf or It's a Wonderful Life. But no, for me, my traditional Christmas one, the one that I've got to watch every year, is, of course, Eyes Wide Shut. Yes, I know, I'm probably surprising nobody. If anyone watched my videos, you probably know that there's like two things I really fanboy for when it comes to movies. One is the Alien franchise, of course, and the other is Stanley Kubrick movies. And while Eyes Wide Shut is not my favorite Stanley Kubrick movie, it is a Christmas one. It is a Christmas movie. It takes place around Christmas, and people are buying gifts, and there's big Christmas parties. And when you get down to it, it's a movie about the spirit of giving. Right? That's what it's all about. So Eyes Wide Shut is the final film from director Stanley Kubrick, released in 1999. And this one stars Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, who were married in real life at the time. And it's about this couple whose marriage is in a bit of an odd state at the moment. And after Nicole Kidman's character, after she confesses to having had lots of desires towards another man who she barely knows, only for like one instance, this kind of sends Tom Cruise's world spiraling upside down at the notion that, yes, women too can have sexual desires. Right? Oh, I'm so shook. And thus begins a weird odyssey throughout this weird, creepy nighttime of New York, and leading to some weird sexual escapades of sorts in what might almost be a weird dreamlike state of sorts. And it gets into some pretty weird, crazy places. Like, it's so interesting about this film because it's not like overtly surreal like David Lynch or anything like that. And some people have theories that like certain elements of the film are real and some are not. They're dreams, or they only exist in the characters' minds. And I kind of get that, but like some of it might be people like over exaggerating it and thinking, you know, oh, there's a secret message. There definitely is. Well, you know, I think there's definitely is to some extent, and that's probably what has led to the longevity of this film, that you can have so many great theories about it and different ideas of what it all meant and, you know, what does this mean and all that stuff. And because there's no real concrete answer, it's a very general film, and that's probably why it holds up, that people are still speculating about it. Obviously, we'll be getting into all the spoiler details. So if you like Kubrick's stuff, you should definitely check this one out. It was definitely a mixed film at the time, because like it didn't get any awards buzz. It topped the box office when it came out. That's probably because everyone thought like, ooh, we're gonna get to see some like naughty stuff in it, right? And they were in for quite a different experience. But, you know, there's definitely been some mixed reception to it, and I think it's one of Kubrick's, like, post-Doctor Strangelove lowest-rated films. It's kind of crazy, because I think it's a really great one. So, you know, you'll probably just have to watch it for yourself. And it's a great Christmas movie, right? Great holiday movie. Very fun. So, the interesting thing surrounding this movie is that Stanley Kubrick like completed the film, submitted it to Warner Brothers Studio for review, and then he died 4 days later. And apparently he was in like good health, and no one noticed anything strange about him or off, that he was feeling sick or anything like that. So there's this long-standing theory that, like, you know, Kubrick was using Eyes Wide Shut to expose the Illuminati or some kind of weird, crazy cult or something, and that they had him killed because of what he did with the film. But I guess this cult that really exists was pretty inept, because the film still got released like uncut, and everything's out there for the world to discover. So they did a pretty bad job of covering this film up, I think, if that was their intention. Like, sure, you killed him, but in the end you just cemented his legacy, and then now his film is available for everyone. So that was a pretty bad move on their part, I think. But that's kind of like the thing that people talk about this film, is there's this weird, crazy cult in the middle of the film, and it's like, are they meant to be like the Rothschilds? Is this meant to be depicting a weekend at Jeffrey Epstein's house? Is this secretly what the Clintons were doing with the whole Pizzagate thing, and Obama and all that stuff? Whatever your views are on anything, I'm sure you could probably link this to some kind of creepy, shady political organization in real life. There's a lot of scummy stuff that's gone on, that's for sure. I'm not trying to pick sides or anything. We just know that, like, there's probably lots of weird, shady behind-the-scenes stuff going on, and that's what this cult was meant to represent. But why don't we backtrack a little bit? We're getting a little ahead of ourselves, right? So, film opens with a shot of Nicole Kidman, like, just undressing. And with this sort of, like, very sort of at ease classical music playing. It's like kind of just a nice waltz, nothing fancy. And to me, that shot, just of her stripping naked, it's a very important shot. Trust me on this one, trust me. Because it really sets up the tone of the film, because the shot is not necessarily trying to look like it's suggestive, right? It's kind of very casual, someone just undressing from their clothes to, like, get into an outfit for a party. Something everyone does, at some point you get undressed, right? You just throw your clothes on the floor or something like that, right? So I think it's trying to establish this sense of, like, the human body is non-sexual as just the human body, right? That's how it is. We all have the bodies like that. That's what it is. And it ties into this sort of thing throughout the film that, like, there's a lot of nudity in this film. It is R-rated and, technically unrated in some editions of the film. But despite that there's so much nudity in this film, very little of it is, like, sensual, or, like, at least meant to give that feeling to the audience. Like, think about when, like, we have a main male protagonist and they take off their shirt, right? Like they're Ben Solo or Thor, right? And we see the abs and the muscles and right? And every once in a while it's like, oh, he's so dreamy, right? Or shirtless Ryan Gosling in Crazy Stupid Love, right? Like, oh, seriously, it's like you're photoshopped, right? Those scenes where it's meant to be, enticing that reaction from the audience. You're meant to be there along with them going like, oh. And, then they do stuff with the female characters, like when Scarlett Johansson first walks on screen, and it's just butt, right? Or the most shameless one of all, Star Trek Into Darkness, right? And she's just getting changed, and, Kirk looks around, and she's like, oh, turn around. Turn around. So again, that's meant to be, for those of us who like that, going like, but there's not that much of that in this film, despite the fact that there's a whole bunch of nudity in it. Like, there's the love scene between Alice and Bill after the Christmas party, right? With that, they did a bad thing. But it's a pretty quick scene, barely 20 seconds, and it fades out really before anything happens. And the whole time, Alice is kind of like looking in the mirror at them, and it's like really weird, really creepy. It's kind of odd. You know, she's not really focused on what's going on. She's looking at their reflection. I guess she listened to Def Leppard's Love Bites. You know, when you make love, do you look in a mirror? There's that scene, which is kind of on the edge of it. The only real scene throughout the film is it's those little fantasies that Bill has of Alice in bed with the naval officer. And those make sense that they're all very sleazy and dirty looking scenes, because it's this vision in his head of this real gross scene and him like playing it up in his mind, like, oh no, this guy's hot and she's totally into him, oh no. And other than that, like, a lot of the nudity is very casual, like people just getting changed or having doctor's appointments, right? And like, you know, people gotta go to the doctor and have their special parts looked at, and you know, it's kind of an awkward thing, right? But that's just how it is, right? We have bodies, that's what they are, right? Normalize the human body. And then the big scene with the cult, right? There's all this sex and nudity happening, but it's all very like creepy or disturbing, and just strange and odd, and everyone's just standing there in masks, just menacingly. So that opening shot of the film, I think, is really crucial to like setting up this theme that, like, yeah, it's nudity, but it's the human body, and that's how it is. That's why so much of the nudity in this film is going to be casual and not just simply for objectification and audience enjoyment, right? Or at least that's how I tend to think of it as. You know, maybe they were just laying the seeds for the opening shot of Lost in Translation. So, there's a big Christmas party happening, and we got Bill and Alice there, having a good time, great Christmas party, and they both kind of get sidetracked by side characters that are kind of tempting them with desires, right? We have the weird Hungarian art guy dancing with Alice, and we have the two models, and the one model, what's her name, Nuala or something like that. Like, wow. Like, you want to talk about obvious doomy eyes in film? This girl, she's got like the most obvious doomy eyes. Like, every face she makes is just like, oh, I want I want to be his wingman, you know, Top Gun. But they both end up resisting their desires, and Bill gets pulled aside to help this girl who's overdosed. There's this really great painting in the background. It's a nude painting, of course, and I'm pretty sure there were some paintings in this film done by Stanley Kubrick's wife, Christiana Kubrick. She does a lot of paintings. I would love to own one of hers, but they're very expensive. You know, check out the website. There's a lot of really cool ones on there. And then she was actually in Paths of Glory as the German prisoner singer at the end of the film, so that's pretty cool. But eventually we get to the big scene in the bedroom where both Bill and Alice, they're a little stoned, and eventually they start having this conversation that just, like, there's so much secondhand embarrassment of it as it just spirals out of control with, like, you know, Bill trying to say, like, you know, oh, you know, I get why someone would want to have sex with you, you're an attractive person. Her misinterpreting that thing, I'm like, you mean that just because I'm an attractive woman, the only reason some guy wants to talk to me is to fuck me? And it just keeps getting worse and worse with, you know, him saying that, like, oh, just women don't think like that. Like, you know, pro tip, never use a women generalization in an argument where you're with a woman and she's mad at you, because you just generalizing like, oh, all women. That's not going to go over well, you know. But it all leads to her admitting that when they were on this trip at this hotel or something, that, like, she saw this naval officer And for like 5 seconds they made eye contact, and in that moment she wanted to throw everything in her life in her way just to be with this guy. So from there, Tom Cruise gets called out to this person he knew, a patient of his, I guess, who's just recently passed away, and you can tell he's definitely using that as an excuse to get out of the house for a little bit to let things simmer. And then it's just a whole bunch of different little mini episodes. They're kind of all just like little bits and pieces connected along, and it's an interesting kind of plot style because like there's not necessarily a through line for these moments. Like there's the connective thread of the fact that's in his mind that, you know, his wife was potentially considering being unfaithful to him, and it's kind of shaking his viewpoint. And so he has all these little episodes revolving around how he's thinking about it, but they're all little mini self-contained stories, right? He goes to the person who's died, and the daughter really, really wants to, well, she's more in love with Bill than she is with her current fiancé, which is funny because he looks like Tom Cruise, but he also looks like Clark Kent. This guy, Carl, he looks like Christopher Reeves and Brandon Routh together, you know, but not Henry Cavill, no. And, you know, then he has this weird encounter with a bunch of these hecklers who are like, call him a bunch of, you know, slurs and trying to imply that, like, you know, that he's not a man, so, you know, therefore he's gay, that, you know, you gotta be a man's man and get with a woman. If you can't get with a woman, you're nothing, right? You know, it's kind of like all those high school insults, you know, like, what's the biggest thing you do to insult a guy is imply that he can't get women. What's the biggest thing to, you know, insult a woman is imply that she has too many guys. It's odd. Very odd. Doesn't make sense. And like right after that moment, then it's like he tries to, like, to himself is mentally proving, I'm a man. He's gonna go sleep with this prostitute, who looks very much like she's cosplaying as Daphne from Scooby-Doo. You know, she's got the purplish dress and velvet and all that. You know, it's a very nice cosplay if that's what you're going for. But eventually he kind of, you know, realizes he's not doing the right thing, so he leaves. But he still pays her in full. You know, that's good. Respect sex workers, right? You cannot be for, you know, videos on the internet and stuff, but also against the people that make them. So respect sex workers and stuff like that. That's important. Very important, right? It's a living for people. That's how it is. And he ends up at this cafe with this piano player who he knew from med school, who was also, he met at the Christmas party, Nick Nightingale. It's in this scene that there is apparently a Stanley Kubrick cameo. But I've heard debates as to about whether this guy was just an extra that happened to look like Kubrick, or that it was Kubrick himself. You know, some people would think that YouTube comments are the absolutely highest of high when it comes to authenticity, especially when it comes to medical advice. I like to be a little more skeptical than that, so I don't necessarily take YouTube comments with the fullest of authority. You know, might be a safe thing to do. But apparently, yeah, there's, you know, in the cafe scene, there's this older man sitting there with this woman, and I don't know if the woman is Christiana Kubrick. Doesn't really look like her. It might be representative of her. And there's a YouTube video on this, but Stanley Kubrick is dressed similarly to Nick Nightingale, and in the scene where Nick Nightingale goes to join Bill at this table, they end up sort of matching in the shot, where, like, the woman there is Tom Cruise, and Nick Nightingale then is Stanley Kubrick. And it's kind of likened as this representation that, like, the scene involves a character sort of pulling in a person, enticing them with this promise of seeing a bunch of smexy naked women. But it ends up leading to something a lot more darker and disturbing of a truth than they were expecting. And this is echoed, literally, in Stanley Kubrick being there, because he did a similar thing with the film itself. He kind of enticed people like, ooh, it's going to be like this dirty, naughty, smexy movie with naked Nicole Kidman and naked Tom Cruise. And, oh, it's going to be lots of stuff going on. Yeah, like Fatal Attraction or something. Or that, what is it, that like 9, is it called 9? Or it's like, I know there's the musical 9, right, with Penelope Cruz. And then there was the animated 9, which is something different, but it was like something Days of, I don't know, I think it was Mickey Rourke, and I'm blanking on it. And they eat lots of food. It's weird. But in a way, he's enticing the audience with a similar promise, and it turns out that the movie has a lot more crazy, creepy depth to it. So it's like kind of a real life versus fiction life sort of thing. So that's pretty cool. And of course, the password is Fidelio, which is the name of Beethoven's only opera. And Tom Cruise, he decides, well, the best thing to do would be to go to the weird, creepy meeting where, you know, there's a blindfolded piano player and there's naked women, and it starts at like 2 a.m. at like a house that apparently actually belonged to the Rothschild family. What could go wrong? He has to get a cloak, mask, and the mask is apparently modeled after Ryan O'Neal's face, who was the main actor in Barry Lyndon. I'm like, yeah, I can see it. That's pretty cool. And this actor who plays the fashion shop owner, Rainbow Fashion, which I don't know if it's intentional, but like the models earlier in the movie, they talk about, let's go where the rainbow ends. Well, he ends up going to Rainbow Fashion. And the owner there, is he the same actor in The Dark Knight, the one sort of gangster? Oh, I want to hear generous proposal from clown, right? And he was right. You have to fix Batman first, right? The clown was right. And my dogs are hungry. Right? Is it the same guy? I'm not sure. Because then there's the other actor, the guy that he gives the coat to, right? Nice coat. Thanks. I don't know if it's all the same people. It's all different guys. I never IMDb'd it. Maybe some of them are similar. I'm not sure. He's great, $100 over the rental place. Okay, you are Greining's doctor. I will tell him you are in and you have called. It's like this weird bit where like his daughter is like prostituting herself to this businessman, and yeah, she has some line in there, and it's something about how you need to make sure your cloak is like lined with something. I don't know, it's very odd. Like she just whispers it, like he's gonna go good. Just ends the scene. I don't know, it's odd. I remember I had to watch it with loud volume and subtitles to understand it, but I'm not sure why that line is like so quietly whispered, and if that's the secret key to everything. But no, it's just like that's it. Finally, he gets to the Rothschild's house, or Epstein's Island, or whatever. Or Harvey Weinstein's place, or the big Hollywood parties, or something like that. I don't know. You can have your own theories about what it is. Right? I suppose you'd like the password. If you'd like, sir. Fidelio. Thank you, sir. We'll drive you up to the house. Another fun fact is, if you ever played the game Heavy Rain, it was a PS3 game, and they remastered it for the PS4. It might be on PS5, we'll see. It's a David Cage game, and it's like one of those interactive storytelling experience games. where most of it is quick time events and cutscenes with little interactive bits. I actually do really, really dig that game. It's one of my favorites. It's one that, unfortunately, it kind of gets a little worse the more you play it, because you have a lot of choices in the game, right? It's a game where you can make choices, and your choices affect the story, right? And it changes the way you play it. But the first time you play it, right, you're really invested in all the characters, and you're just like, I think my character might die in this scene. I gotta make sure I don't mess up the quick time scene. And, like, this is a big decision. What's gonna happen? Oh, it could go either way. And the first time you go through it blind, not knowing anything, is a really, really great experience. You can not top that. The more you play it, the more you will kind of see how you don't have as much of a say in the story, or maybe you can't actually get characters killed in as many ways as you'd think. Like, I won't spoil, I'll keep it as vague as possible, but basically there are some action sequences where your character is kind of in life or death moments, and your first time playing, you're kind of thinking like, my character might actually die if I mess this up. What am I going to do? And if you play through a second time and you intentionally mess up the sequences, you'll see that no, actually most of the time your character is not in as much danger as you'd think. The story will kind of magically whisk away those events, so that your character actually doesn't die. Towards the end of the game, though, there are a lot of chapters where, yes, your character can die. In fact, it kind of gets to a point where, like, almost every sequence has a potential death moment if you mess up enough events. So that's cool, but throughout a good chunk of the story, it's this kind of false illusion of, potential death. Or lots of scenes where, your option is, do we go to this place or do we not go? And you say, let's go. And you're like, okay, good. And next time you say, let's not go. Another character says, well, we don't have a choice, we have to go. And then you end up going anyways, right? So it's like not a real choice. But that first playthrough of Heavy Rain, you cannot beat that. That's a very good playthrough. Going in blind, not knowing how it is. Well, I bring up Heavy Rain because the taxi driver in the scene, the one that Tom Cruise rips up a $100 bill and says, I'll give you 50 now, I'll give you 50 later, and like, I don't know, is he supposed to duct tape that back together? Like, what good's that gonna do? A ripped $100 bill? Like, can you deposit that? I don't know. Well, that taxi driver is the actor who plays Scott Shelby, the private eye detective in Heavy Rain. So that's pretty cool, right? I know there were some people where they used their voices, but not their faces, and some of these the faces, not the voice. I can't remember if he was in one of those ones. I mean, he looks like Scott Shelby, and he sounds like him too. It was 10 years before or so, but I mean, I think it is him, both voice and face. So that's pretty cool. You never know if some private eye detective is going to be driving your taxi. Could be anyone, right? Who knows who they might be, right? Pretty crazy. So we get into the house, and that's where the weird, creepy song starts playing, and there's all the people in the masks and stuff, and the weird ritual going on, and the guy in the red cloak, the sort of main ringleader, he's played by Leon Vitali, who is Stanley Kubrick's personal assistant, and he was Lord Bullington, the adult Lord Bullington, in Barry Lyndon, and he's got a great voice, right? Especially when he's standing from behind the mask, remove your clothes. Great. I also love how the metal band Ghost, how they used to, I don't think they did it on their recent tour, but they used to use the music from this scene, which is called Masked Ball by Jocelyn Pook. They used to use that song as like the lights down intro music for their concerts, right? Because they themselves wear masks. There's even an extra in the background who has a mask that looks like it was the basis for the original Nameless Ghoul masks. So that's pretty great. Yeah, it's just real fun. You know, you're at a Ghost concert and the lights go down and you hear that that weird like backwards Romanian chant, right? And also, you know, the fact that Ghost is like a satanic band and there's lots of sex and like their imagery and stuff like that. So the fact that they're using something from Eyes Wide Shut and the scene that involves that's pretty awesome, pretty great. And eventually, you know, that one girl that goes with Tom Cruise starts to realize that, you know, he's an outsider, probably because he showed up late and his mask is not of the same style as everybody else's. So, you know, that was not a good move. Not a good move. And this leads to him getting discovered with that terrifying piano music. And I don't have perfect pitch, so like I'm not sure if the note is a G note, but if it is, that's funny because most people, they hear single G note, and they think, oh, it's My Chemical Romance, Welcome to the Black Parade, oh, my childhood, it's not a phase, Mom, get the eyeliner. But when you hear it like 12 times over, down, 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 like this is stabbing motion, then it just gets real creepy, and then you're thinking the Eyes Wide Shut soundtrack. Yeah, such a well-shot scene, well-shot movie. I mean, you know, it's Kubrick directing, right? So of course it's going to be fantastic. And they let him go as long as he promises not to talk, and it's like a big warning to like scare him off. And yeah, I don't know if it was real life, would they've just offed him, you know, not trusted him. I'm not sure. Now he gets back home, and Alice has had this really horrifying dream where like they were in a weird desert city, she was naked, and there was all these other guys lining up to have a go at her, and you know, then Bill was just standing there and she found it funny, so she just laughed. And some people have thought that this meant that like she was a member of the cult, like she was there the whole time, and I don't know, that one seems a little far-fetched, but that's kind of the great thing about this movie, is that like so many of the theories around it, as far-fetched as they may seem, still have some kind of element of plausibility to them. And like, maybe you're reaching on that one, I don't know if that's what they're going for, but actually, you know, you might be onto something. Right? None of them are like as crazy far-fetched or out there as other things that are just like, oh, this meant that, and like, yeah, okay, sure, they totally meant for that, okay, right. So then the next part of the movie is kind of interesting. It's like, stylistically, I find it similar to the second section of A Clockwork Orange, because in that movie, it was like Alex, he had his sort of night out, and he had a lot of different encounters with a bunch of people and randomness and stuff, and then after he's had the Ludovico treatment and been cured, he goes out into the world and then has now a second encounter with a lot of the people that he previously encountered, right? So like in the beginning, like him and his droogs, they beat up this drunk guy, and then later on in the film, now he runs into the same guy, right? But now he's the one that gets beaten up. Or, you know, he has his droogs and then they leave after they beat him up to be left scot by the police. And then he meets them again, only now they're police officers, and they beat him up. Or, you know, he invades the house of the writer and they beat him and assault his wife. And eventually he ends up back at the same house, but the writer doesn't recognize him. And his like new assistant is played by David Prowse, R.I.P. So yeah, kind of a similar style where it's like, the first half of the movie is meeting all these people, and the second half he kind of goes back, retracing his steps in a way. The retracing of steps is a little more intentional and deliberate in Eyes Wide Shut because it's a new day, and Bill's going out of his way to kind of, retrace his steps and see all the people that he met the previous night. So, like, he goes back to Rainbow Fashion to return the outfit, and it's established that he's lost the mask. Or did he? And it's implied that, like, okay, it's not implied, it's obvious that, Mr. Milledge's daughter is, he's helping solicit her for her services, right? I mean, we never really find out who those guys were, but maybe I kind of think of it as, like, these guys were going to try to, like, close down the shop or something, and because she, like, solicited herself, that, like, they agreed to, like, overturn some kind of contracts or arrangements and let the shop live another day. Maybe. Possibly. I'm not sure. Like, he tries to find Nick Nightingale, and, it's kind of weird. He kind of, like, get this idea that Bill thinks of himself as, like, a true hero or a badass. That, like, he's always flashing his wallet around, like, look here, I'm a doctor. Right? I think it's funny that, like, someone who is called for him, it's said later that a Mrs. Shapiro called for him. It's funny because he's a doctor, and therefore, if this Shapiro person called for him, then she's probably a doctor too. So, my wife is a doctor, right? From that one guy who's so controversial. I'm laughing too much at my own jokes, right? The point is that Ben Shapiro exists as a character in the world of Eyes Wide Shut before people even really knew him to be a thing. So, that's pretty cool. And I love Alan Cumming. Right, Alan Cummings. As this, like, hotel clerk. I mentioned earlier how the Nuala model, how she is, like, given the most obvious doomy eyes in the history of film. Well, Alan Cummings' character as this receptionist, he is giving the second most obvious doomy eyes in the history of film. In this scene, he's just like, oh, okay, Bill, Oh, there are these two big guys, very well dressed, but not the type of guys you like to fool around with, if you know what I mean. And there's even a shot after he leaves where we just see him kind of like, they're like, okay, very odd. This is great about this film, is that there's so many unnamed characters or random encounters, but all the little moments are really interesting and memorable. Like, he goes back to Domino's place, and her roommate's there, and he really creepily, like, unbuttons her dress and stuff, and finds out that Domino just was confirmed to be HIV positive. So again, respect sex workers, right? That's important. Which he kind of did. I mean, he really creepily hit a roommate, but he brought her a gift of some sorts and paid her in full, even for one kiss. So it's a toss-up. There's an odd moment where he's back at his office after hours, and probably because he just wants to be alone. And he tries to call, what's her name? Person's daughter again, but Carl answers, so he just hangs up. And I don't know, I always thought of it as like, maybe he was trying to see if she was DTF, but because Carl answered the phone, it's like, nope. And then he does the big stupid thing, which is he goes back to the Rothschild's house. Why would you do that? Stay away, right? What do you think they're going to do? Open the front gate and be like, come on in, check out the mansion, have some cake. No, there's just a guy who looks like a cross between Bernie Sanders and Larry David. Just kind of come up and just be like, hands him a letter, and piano music plays again. The piano music's so creepy. They gotta play it 4 times in the film. And it's also just creepy to think that, like, they have this envelope with his name with, like, typed out instructions written on it. Thankfully not in Comic Sans. But, just the idea that, like, they have this letter already prepared to give him in case he tries to inquire again, like, that's pretty creepy, right? It's not like some handwritten letters, like, no, somebody, like, typed this out and had it prepared. It wasn't spur of the moment, it was made ready for him. That's creepy. And, eventually, he realizes he's being followed, more creepy piano music, and it just sort of happens upon a cafe where he reads the news of this person dying, which he recognizes from the story. Sounds like something a little suspect. And, he sees the girl, and I'm always kind of curious. I'm not really sure, like, when he read the newspaper of the person dying in the overdose, did he recognize in the story that it was the same girl from the party at the beginning of the film? Because he knew her name was Mandy. I don't know if it was ever said that her full name was, Amanda Curran. And, it's not like they have a picture of the body. It sounds like, he thinks the story is a little suspect, right? And coincidental that this person fits the description of the one who helped him. But, like, he sees the person's body in the morgue, which is, of course, like, C-Wing Room 114, CRM 114. I got you, Kubrick, I see references. And I don't know, because later on he gets invited back to the Zeiglers, played by Sidney Pollack, R.I.P. And, he brings it up later in the conversation, like, oh, that girl, she was the hooker, the one who OD'd in my bathroom. And I don't know, it's not like he acts like it's a big reveal, like, what, they were the same person? That's crazy. But he doesn't also act like yeah, I knew. So I'm wondering if, like he saw her body there, right? Like, should be pretty clear, but, I don't know. Because I knew going in that it was the same person, so I didn't know, like, if it was something that was supposed to be revealed to the audience. I'm not exactly sure how that works. And, we learned that, the Zeigler character, he's part of this weird cult. And you could tell something was shady about him. I mean, he introduces his wife in the opening Christmas party, but then later on he's off doing, like, snowball or speedball, like heroin and coke in his bathroom with a prostitute. Maybe he was just supporting sex workers. I don't know. But, you can tell something's a little off about this whole thing, right? And yeah, so he's obviously a member of the cult. I mean, most likely he was the guy with the weird, elongated white mask that was on the balcony that kind of just nodded to him. Most likely, perhaps. And yeah, he kind of explains the whole thing, and it's odd because, like, so I watched this film when I was way too young because I had this DVD set. Why don't I go get that for you? One moment. Okay, so here I have this lovely Stanley Kubrick DVD box set. So, that's how you know it's old, is that it's DVDs. And it's got almost every 2001 onwards film from Kubrick. It's oddly missing Barry Lyndon. And I'm not sure why. I'm wondering if either A, because it wasn't nearly as well received as the other films here, or I think it might have been under a different film company, right? No, because 2001 was like MGM, and Clockwork Orange was like, and that was Warner Brothers. Barry Lyndon's got like a Warner's Communications logo that pops up at the start. I don't know. Right? But yeah, so that's the films we got there, right? 2001, Clockwork Orange, The Shining, Full Metal Jacket, and of course, Eyes Wide Shut. And then there's this very lovely documentary, Stanley Kubrick, A Life in Pictures. So, there's the Eyes Wide Shut cover, a little picture of the mask, and yeah, very cool set, right? And it's weird because it says here that it's selectable in rated and unrated versions for the first time in North America, because the North American version was R-rated, not unrated, and that was because during some of those scenes at the orgy party, that they digitally inserted extras to kind of block some more of the revealing shots. And I've always wondered if what I was watching was the rated version or the uncut version. And I've seen a shot comparison, and no, I've actually been watching the unrated one the whole time, so that's good, you know. Apparently Kubrick, he was not against the idea of inserting extras to block some nudity. You know, he'd prefer it to have been what he wanted, but he wasn't against it, you know, so nice little box set here. But basically it was that I got this when I was younger, mainly so I could have 2001: A Space Odyssey, and then it was kind of decided that, you know, well, as I got older, I'd be allowed to watch the other ones. But I secretly watched Clockwork Orange and Eyes Wide Shut well before the age that I was supposed to, because I was told I wasn't allowed to, so of course that made me want to do it more. That's just the way these things work, you know, you withhold things from children and teenagers, and they just are more like, oh, that's a bad, naughty thing, I want to do that more, yeah. So, you know, you gotta have a nice balance of it, right? But yeah, so that's Eyes Wide Shut there. Yeah, I don't know, I remember, like, I couldn't find anything on the DVD to select a different version, but the one that's on there is the unrated, so I guess that's fine. I mean, you know, if you have the unrated, why would you bother with the R-rated? It's not even that much of a difference anyways, so, I don't know, normalize the human body. The point is when I was younger, I kind of just, like, assumed that, like, Ziegler was just like, you know, oh, okay, so he said that, you know, Nick was sent home to his wife, and this prostitute just died because she was a drug addict, and she just overdosed herself. Everything's okay, it's fine, go home, ignore it, forget about it, you know, you're not a detective, you're not a hero, stop trying to act like you are. And I was just like, okay. But, you know, the more I watch it, the more I'm kind of like, well, is that true? You know? He says, oh, Nick's at home banging his wife, and I just feel like that Tyler, the Creator meme, like, so that was a fucking lie. I don't know. You know, maybe he isn't telling the truth, I'm not sure. Right? Maybe he's just like the good friendly face to convince us, and in a way that's like representative of the fact that we, the audience, think of this character as a friendly face, because, like, oh, you know, he was at the opening party, and they hung out and had some drinks, and, like, you know, Dr. Bill helped him with the situation and stuff, right? But maybe that was all to set it up for later, as we don't suspect him, right? And you kind of watch it more, and, you know, it's like that sort of smaller scale horror movie Society. All right, you know, I bet he's in on it, she's in on it, they're in on it, everyone's in on it. Right? And now we get to the one part of the film, the one part where I do think it is not what we see is real, where some of it is in the head, in the imagination. And it's that Alice is asleep, and on Bill's pillow is the mask, the one that he lost, the one that's missing somehow. And theory on that, and I kind of buy into it a bit, is that the mask isn't actually there. That it is like a representation of the guilt he feels about the whole situation that he's put his family in, and the terrifying moments that have arisen because of this. Because, like, Nicole Kidman, Alice, she doesn't even seem to really acknowledge the mask there, right? And, like, if her putting the mask there was kind of like this power play, like a I know what you did last summer sort of thing, like, it's weird that when Bill comes in and he breaks down that she's kind of confused, like, what's going on? I don't understand. What's up? Right? So that's a case where I think it might be a symbolic scene. But as for whether or not the whole movie's a dream or a bunch of stuff, I'm still a little undecided on that. But, you know, if this was by David Lynch, I would, you know, without question, be like, it's all a dream. You know, we live inside a dream. But in Stanley Kubrick, not so sure about that. Like, Kubrick does weird, subtle continuity errors to mess with your mind, particularly in The Shining. But other than that, he's not a very subtle director. Like, usually if he has a theme that he wants to express, he's gonna beat you over the head with a giant mallet to be like, do you understand what I'm trying to say? Like in A Clockwork Orange and in Full Metal Jacket or in Paths of Glory, like, there's no like, I wonder what it all means. It's just like, oh yeah, like, you know, war's bad and shit's fucked, right? So, I don't know. I don't necessarily view Kubrick to necessarily do things like that. At least I think it was meant to be very, what it is the obvious thing is the obvious thing. At least that's how I feel. You can't trust my opinion, just trust the opinion of some random people who have commented on a YouTube or Facebook post with no history of experience in the subject whatsoever. They're probably more trustworthy individuals. And this brings us to the final scene, where they're out at the toy store with their daughter. You know, she's looking at all the Christmas toys, because it's a Christmas movie. And there's this theory that, like, their daughter gets abducted at the end of the movie and they don't even realize it. And I've watched the scene very carefully and I don't get it. I don't understand. Like, it's the shot where, like, it's right before we get the final conversation, where that's shot in, you know, reverse shot close-ups, where, like, their daughter walks between them, you know, and sort of give her a pat on the back, and then she's walking around, looking around, she just kind of looks back at them, and walks around looking at more stuff, and some people think that, like, that there's this old guy in the background who, like, was at the party at the beginning, or he was at the Rothschild's house, and that, you know, when she looks back, it's like her saying, like, do I have to go with this weird guy? And I don't know about that. That seems really random, and I don't even think this guy that they're talking about looks like any of the guys. Like, kind of maybe, but maybe he's just some old guy. And she doesn't even walk off with the old guy. Like, he walks around a bit and walks around the corner, and she just walks around looking at toys. Like, I don't know. I think if Kubrick wanted to illustrate that she was getting taken away by the Illuminati at the end, that he would have made it more obvious for us to see, not like a little hidden detail like, oh, I bet you never noticed that. Like, this stuff is, apart from The Shining, which also Shining stuff is not subtle at all, and it's a horror movie, right? Like, he went all out with the horror movie stuff. Eyes Wide Shut is not supposed to be a horror movie. It's got some creepy moments to it, but it's not what it is. erotic thriller. I don't know. I think it would have been made more obvious. But that's just about how I feel about the matter. They have their final conversation, and, like, I don't know if this is all a dream or not, but I do know that there is one thing we need to do, right? Great line, This is the final word of the final Kubrick film is just simply, fuck. What a great way to end a filmography, I don't think Kubrick planned for it to be his last film, but, the fact that it was, well, that's quite an ending to go out on, indeed. And, he was supposed to make AI, artificial intelligence, afterwards, because him and his best buddy, Steven Spielberg, they kept on throwing the idea around back and forth for a while about who would write and produce and who would direct. And they both kind of felt that, like, one or the other was better suited for the topic of the story. And obviously with Kubrick dying before he could direct it, Spielberg kind of took up the mantle of that and decided, well, okay, I'll make this film and I'll try to do it in Stanley Kubrick style. And it mostly worked. AI is a pretty cool film. It's got a real nice style to it. It's not one of my favorites, but it's a pretty interesting film nonetheless, that's for sure. So, I just did a whole review of this Kubrick film, right? And the question is am I going to do the others? Well, we're ending off this 12 days of ASMR Christmas beer videos now, so what's the next project? Well, I'm not really sure exactly. I've thought about making a Kubrick video, but also, as you can see, I am capable of ranting for quite some time about just a singular film. So, I'm not committed to this project, but, part of me would like to maybe make each Kubrick film its own review. Because the earlier films, like Fear and Desire or The Killing or Killer's Kiss, I might not have too much to say, but once we get into the behemoths like Doctor Strangelove and Lolita and Barry Lyndon, I'll have a lot to say about those films. So we'll see, maybe I'll do a bunch of other Kubrick videos, maybe I'll make one big one, we'll figure it out, but I would like to, obviously, because I did a David Lynch filmography. Go check that one out. Be nice to do a Kubrick one as well. Well, that's it. No more. Christmas beer season is over. So, why don't we do a nice little look back at the great times we've had, I've got all the beers right here. Let's go through them all one by one. Good day, eh? So, on day one we had, this is Mind Maze Blue Corn Lager. This one was like your regular style lager of a beer, very common ground zero for beer, but it had a nice little extra flavor to it with the blue corn. This is a good beer. Okay. Next one, day two, we had Somewhere Beyond Deep Orbit Single Hop Pale Ale. This one was like, a nice hoppy beer, very light tasting, but definitely got a nice little bitterness to it. Pretty good one, in terms of all those nice hoppy beers. Okay, day three, we had Lamppost London Fog Wit Beer. Wit beers are usually lighter, fruitier, frothy beers, but this one was interesting in that it had like a London Fog Earl Grey tea sort of thing going on. And yes, it did have decaf Earl Grey tea and vanilla and lactose in it. And it was a stronger one at 7%, so it was a very odd wit beer, but I really liked it. Day 4A, we had Prismatism Dry Hopped Sour, right? It was like a soury one, but not like a fruity sour. It was like a bittery, hoppy sour, right? So, it was a good sour, that's for sure, nice and sour. Good day, A, and welcome to day 5. Day 5, we had the Black Took Cascadian Dark Ale. Great salute to our national rodent, A, Took. That's what this is. It's a Took. And this one was not like a malty, and it was like, think like a ale beer, but like with a little bit more darkness to it. This is a good beer. Okay, good day, A, and welcome to day 6. Day 6, we had Tan Lines, Toasted Coconut Brown Ale. If the last beer, the Black Took, was not dark enough for you, A, well, then don't worry. This one was like real roasty and dark and malty and stuff, and had good old velvet to it, but with good coconut for good measure. Okay, good day, A. We got second half, day 7, with a brunch punch, orange mango beer mosa. So what you do is you're going to want to take a mimosa, which is like orange juice and like some kind of wine or sparklingness, and drink that, and there you go. You've got a taste of this beer mosa. Okay, day 8, we got Caber Tosser, Wee Heavy Cherrywood Smoked Ale. This one's heavy, like 9% heavy. Like, this is like drinking a meal, right? This will real knock you out one, and it's flavorful. Okay, day 9. Well, we got the Tower, which is like the worst tarot card ever, right? Because, everything's going to suck for you. But this beer does not suck, because it's an Amber Brent Saison, and it's like thick and fruity and flavorful and stuff. So, don't draw this card, because that's bad luck for you. But this beer is not bad luck. Okay, day 10. We got the Sonicated Triple IPA amplifier, and it's like a Marshall amp, and I don't own a Marshall amp, and I would really like to own one, so this is about the closest I've ever come to owning a Marshall amp. So I'm really jealous, that I don't have this beer anymore, because now I don't have a Marshall amp or a beer, and this one's actually not that bitter or hoppy. It's actually very flavorful, which is good. Okay, day 11, we got Barbed Wire Strawberry Rhubarb Sour. This one's very sour, like pucker your lips sour, and it's fruity, and all you need to do is throw on some crumbs, and then you got yourself strawberry rhubarb pie in a can. And lastly, that brings us back to Stickenfass barrel-aged Stick Altbier, 6.9%, tattoos and stuff. So that's a nice real round way to end it all out, nice and strong and flavorful and bourbony and holiday spirit. So that's it. No more Christmas reviews. No more beer. No more Dunsies over and outskies. So where do we go from here? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. But, we'll figure out something. Anyway, I guess in a way this is my Christmas gift to you all. I made more reviews in 12 days than I did in like 2 years. So that's pretty impressive. And, you'll have yourselves a good holiday season, whatever you celebrate, have a good one, right? And make sure you all stay safe out there and do your part. So, yeah, that's all I got for you. Hope you all enjoyed that. I'll catch you next time. But, of course, don't forget, there is one more very important thing we need to do as soon as possible. What is that, you ask? Fall asleep. What do you think I was going to say?